just demission the street sweepers.
No, it can't.
No.
Can't break the law.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. Whereas there is a quorum of council present, the time is 6:30 p.m. Be it resolved that this regular meeting be open for business and that the minutes of the regular meeting of June 25th, 2025 be approved. Could I have a mover for that? Councilor Boggs. Second. Councilor Burns. All in favor? Carried. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are on land that has been inhabited by Anishinaabe nations. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Sagamok Anishinaabe, and we would like to give thanks for sharing this land. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? And being heard, consent agenda. Oh, yes. We have additions to the agenda. Be it resolved that the following be added to the regular agenda: closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to consider personal matters about identifiable individuals respecting municipal employees. And we have the resignation of our interim fire chief. Could I have a mover for that? Councilor Phillips. Second. Councilor Grabs. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that item A1 contained on the consent agenda be adopted. Could I have a mover for that? Councilor Crabbe, second. Councilor Phillips. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on. Canada Day celebration acknowledgement. Be it resolved that the Council of Township of Sables-Spanish Rivers thanks all individuals and organizations involved in the Canada Day activities hosted throughout the municipality on July 1st, 2025, and that their commitment to community engagement and national pride be commended. Could I have a mover for that? Councilor Boggs, second. Councilor Phillips, all in favor? Carried. RPC annual review. Be it resolved that the council of the Township Sables-Spanish Rivers approves increasing the total credit card facility with RBC Royal Bank from 30,000 to 50,000, and that the treasurer is authorized to execute all necessary documentation and liaise with RBC Royal Bank to implement this change. I have a mover for that. Councilor Burns, second. Councilor Phillips. Questions or comments?
So just what was what justified the increase, Ruth, from 30 to 50,000?
So there's 20,000, about 20, almost 30,000 already accounted for in issued cards. And just with the cost of inflation, the cost of conferences and stuff going up, potentially I think we should be reviewing what the limits for department heads are. Not at this time, I think could be something during finance. So that's just giving that room for that to happen right now.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. All right, protections of persons and property, RFP for animal control services. Be it resolved that the council of the Township Sables-Spanish Rivers accepts the proposal from Wenrick Kennels Incorporated, Rainbow District Animal Services to provide animal control services commencing January 1st, 2026. And that the clerk be directed to prepare a bylaw for the August 13th, 2025 council meeting to enter into an agreement for animal control services. We have a mover for that, Councilor Phillips, second. Councilor Krabs. Questions or comments?
How many, can you get more than just the one?
Just no one,
Nobody else applied.
which is
Yeah.
So-
really too bad.
Yeah, so
Well, it's a big undertaking. You need a pound, you need a facility for the animals, you need qualifications, so.
okay, just one to one.
All in favor? Carried. Okay. Public Information Officer resignation. Be it resolved that council accepts with regret Tiffany Goodchild's resignation as Public Information Officer for the Sables-Spanish Rivers Fire Department, and that we thank her for her service and wish her well in her future endeavors. Could I have a mover for that? Councilor Phillips, second. Councilor Burns, any questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Unfortunate. And be it resolved that council accepts with regret Jewel Recollect's resignation as fire prevention officer for the Sables-Spanish Rivers Fire Department. And that we thank her for her service and wish her well in her future. Have a mover for that. Councilor Hobbs, second. Councilor Phillips. Questions or comments?
Just in her absence, how do we ensure that the fire prevention officer responsibilities are being met in the interim?
I'm not sure. We're gonna have to discuss this with. Yes.
If I can comment, we have had a fire inspection request, and we have made arrangements for the town of Espanola to conduct that inspection, for that business, so all immediate, concerns have been met.
Perfect.
Thanks, Amanda.
All in favor? Carried. Bunker gear, be it resolved that council accept quote 021347-0 from M&L Supply Fire and Safety in the amount of $30,447.42 excluding HST for 12 sets of bunker gear, and that invoice 260-26682 in the total amount of $31,266.10, excluding HST from M&L Supply Fire and Safety, be approved for payment, and that the received fire protection grant funding be applied accordingly. You have a mover for that? Councillor Hobbs, second. Councillor Burns. Any questions, anyone, or
Most of that was covered by grant, eh?
I think.
It's
All of it.
all,
All of it?
yeah, just so everybody knows. Thank you.
That's good. All in favor? Carried. Public Works Committee meeting minutes. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Public Works Committee of July 2nd, 2025 be accepted, and that any recommendations contained in the minutes be dealt with separately by council. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Krabs, second. Councillor Burns. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that the septage receiving policy and septage receiving agreement template be accepted as presented. Could I have a mover for that? Councillor Chica, second. Councillor Crab. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Moving along with our policies, that's a good thing. Be it resolved that council approve the release of the guide rail tender for the installation of guide rails on River Road and Bass Point Road. Could I have a mover for that? Councillor Burns, second. Councillor Hobbs. Questions or comments? This will allow us to properly service Bass Point Road during the winter. That's a big step for the residents, and might I add that they will be responsible for paying for the guardrails. So, all in favor? Carried. Yeah, so Dr. Kia, our incoming physician, has requested discussion on housing support. I guess the rents are astronomical, and I mean, when we did meet her prior to her signing on with us, I did say that there could be a possibility of some kind of rent subsidy. But once she signed on, I guess our discussion kind of went beyond that and was focused on subsidies should she decide to stay after her 3 years. But so she asked Marla if we would consider some kind of support, housing support for the time being. I don't know, any ideas there?
It's just, I say, like, I understand like the challenges in recruiting and retention of healthcare professionals, but there's already a $25,000 incentive to bring our doctors in. I'm not in support of using ratepayers' money to add an additional for housing support. You're responsible to ensure that public funds are used fairly and transparent, so, no, I wouldn't be in favor of that added support.
Any other comments? Councillor Phillips?
I mean, we can maybe look at it next year, but the budget is done for this year and we've already skimmed off in different areas. As much as I appreciate her coming, and
Yes.
I think at this time I cannot support that, but put in, she can ask again next year if there's some way we can wangle something in the budget, but as for this year's budget, it is set and I don't think we should mess with it anymore.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Any other comments? Councillor Burns?
What are other municipalities doing?
Oh, all kinds of
Various
things.
things.
Building
Yeah.
houses. It's like, we're not in the position to do that,
No.
obviously, but, I don't know.
What does our treasurer say anyway? Like,
Well-
our budget is pretty nip and tuck
Do we
right
have
now.
any,
Yeah,
do we have any
right,
wiggle room? No?
Councillor Phillips said it all, like,
Yeah.
we just skimmed what we could.
Yeah.
We're halfway through the year, there shouldn't be any revisions now.
No.
And Amanda reviewed the new policy, she doesn't meet that criteria yet for the recruitment or retention, because,
No.
we
Yeah.
want that to be a doctor that's going to sign on for
Well,
5 years.
that's what we,
Replace a physician at the clinic, so,
So
yeah,
there's some-
definitely we wanna revisit it in next year's budget.
budget time.
Because we can't be using the funding that we're receiving from the ministry for that, just so
Yeah.
council is aware, it'll have to be taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, we have to use
Yeah.
that money to run the clinic.
Mhm.
All right, well, that'll put that subject to bed for now. We'll have to write a letter to Marla stating that, we're halfway through budget and, we can't even consider it at this point, so perhaps in 2026.
She can do the request again.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, moving on, Parks and Recreation Committee appointment. Tim Stressman. Be it resolved that Tim Stressman be appointed to the Parks and Recreation Committee for the remainder of the term. Could I have a mover for that? Councillor Burns, second. Councillor Krabs. Questions or comments? Kim has a wealth of experience in Parks and Recreation. I'm sure she'll make a valid contribution there. So, all in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a first and second time. Bylaw 2025-41 being a bylaw to provide a policy for receiving septage in the township of Sables-Spanish Rivers. And bylaw 2025-42 being a bylaw for the purpose of repealing a bylaw to appoint a fire prevention officer. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Rachika, second, Councillor Krabs. Comments, questions?
Okay, I guess our septic receiving policy, we never had a real, was it a single page policy before and that, wasn't it? John? Maybe you could get a little bit of insight
There
on
was
this.
something.
Yeah, that's correct. The previous one was very much a single pager. So basically, this policy provides for the municipality to exercise proper governance over the site, proper care and proper controls. So it just very clearly identifies what the requirements are for the septic haulers, how they're to use the site, how they're to report back to us. And I think it covers any requirement that might be dictated by the ECA as well. So it puts us in a position where we're exercising the appropriate level of stewardship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Yeah, we have several operators involved now, and we have to have tighter control over that. So, all in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a third and final time and passed in open council. Bylaw 2025-41 being a bylaw, provide a policy for receiving septic in the township of Sables-Spanish rivers, and bylaw 2025-43 being a bylaw for the purpose of repealing a bylaw to appoint a fire prevention officer. Could I have a mover? Councillor Phillips, second. Councillor Burns, all in favor? Carried.
You said 4-3 for repealing the bylaw, that's 4-2.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay. Bylaw 2025-42, being a bylaw for the purpose of repealing a bylaw to appoint a fire prevention officer. So until we go into closed, around the table, anybody have anything? Nothing? All right. Be it resolved that we move into closed session at 6:53 PM pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to consider the following: personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. Could I have a mover? Councillor Phillips, second. Councillor Hobbs, all in favor? Carried.